Thank you very much. I'm going to do this a little differently because of what Larry Arnn just said. When a guy like Larry Arnn tells you this is 1860, pay attention, right? Last weekend, what was it, 250th anniversary of Lexington and Concord? There's a lot of water between now and next July 4th, right? And July 4th is not totally and completely, I think, celebrated right here in the United States. You know, we do the barbecues, the cooks, the birthday of the country. Remember, on the day it was actually signed, before they promulgated it, the British landed in Staten Island. The largest expeditionary force in the history of man landed, and by August, it was a total and complete throwdown. We had the American Thermopylae in Brooklyn. A couple weeks later, the American Dunkirk right there at Brooklyn Heights to get the army, save the army, get them to Manhattan. One retreat after another, all the way back on the other side of the Delaware, where they dug in and waited to Christmas night. We celebrate the 4th of July like it was a document that was a declaration of war of men who knew that they were putting it all on the line and would be hung as traitors if we lost. When Larry Arnn says it's 1860, he's not kidding. I want you to think about that for a second. What happened in 1860? And how were we inexorably drawn to a civil war? The only thing I disagree with Larry Arnn is that we're not kind of in a war, we're in a war. And every one of you here, just like Trump and Navarre and Bannon and many others, Tom Barrack, better be ready to go to prison and ready to be bankrupt and ready to be debanked. It is very uncertain what the outcome of this is. Divine providence has been with us. In 16, I was there at a ringside seat. We had a man, we had a plane, we had no money, no organization, self-organized. One time he was 10 to 12 points down to Hillary Clinton in August, mid-August. Then later we closed it up and he got down another 6 or so on the Billy Bush weekend, and we pulled it off because of his tenacity in reaching Americans who would never vote for a Republican in their entire life because they saw something in Trump, right? And then, remember that administration attacked every day by the deep state and the administrative state? Every day. I had 60 hours in front of the Mueller Commission and the House Intelligence Committee with Schiff and Swalwell running it. Why were they running it? Because Paul Ryan, a Republican, punched out and turned it over to the Democrats and the House Intelligence Committee. And I've got legal bills to prove it, as other people do too. Why? For hours and hours and hours, they want to get you in a perjury trap, so you flip on Trump. I was there in 20 when Donald John Trump won his second term. Yeah. Hell yeah, he won it. There's no question he won it. But divine providence works in mysterious ways, right? Think about if the second term had been then. We weren't ready. We weren't ready the first time. Larry knows this. He helped us in the transition the first time. We didn't have the policies. We didn't have the bench. We didn't have the depth. But think about when President Trump was forced back and went to Mar-a-Lago on the afternoon of 20 January 2021. Remember how dark that was? Right? Remember the folks watching the war room? Boris is sitting there on the tarmac at Andrews Air Force Base, and there was not a lot of official DC there. Remember that? And what was it when Trump got there? He's like a lion in winter, correct? He knew he had won, and he knew they had stolen it. Right then, in those first couple of days, he made one of the most courageous and morally focused clarity decisions in American history. You can read Jack Kennedy's or Ted Sorensen's Profile in Courage to the 10th power, all of them wrap it up. Trump understood if he played the game and took a big book deal and started buying more golf courses and getting the open rota over in the United Kingdom and getting to the PGA rota here, life would be fine, right? Had a great family, beautiful wife, young. He's still young and vibrant. He made a decision to return. Just like Cincinnatus, back from the plow to save his country. Nobody in American history has ever made that decision, understanding he knew they were going to bankrupt him. He knew they were going to try to put him in prison. He knew they were going to try to destroy him and his family. And he made the decision, I'm coming back. And remember how many people abandoned him. Think about it. And let me start with Fox News and the Murdochs. For 2 years, he wasn't live on TV. As they put up every Republican, standard Republican, good people, fine people. They're not going to be president of the United States, and they're certainly not going to be president of the United States when the nation has a crisis. And think about that, coming all the way back. Remember those dark years of 21 and 22, how tough it was, how we had to grind? But divine providence was there because we saw that these are not typical Democrats. These are radical Marxists. It was like the Stasi. Remember the billboards, right? Turning your neighbor in. Remember the speeches that Biden would give at Independence Hall? As a sacrilege to the most sacred places we have in this country. There's no depth to what they would do. As we now find out, for Tulsi Gabbard puts out their plan that we talked about for years, what they did in COVID, what they did with the vaccines, what they did with the mandates over and over and over again. That's a Marxist. This is cultural Marxism with the heavy hand of totalitarian control and state capitalism. It's the Chinese Communist Party model. And we grinded through it. And what happened in that time? Two important things. The precinct strategy. People started getting engaged because you know why? It's about human agency. If Lexington and Concord shows us anything, it's that. There's nothing foreordained. It's all about you in that defining moment on Lexington Common, hiding Sam Adams and John Hancock. At Concord Bridge when you know they're coming. That was you. On the precinct strategy to give him a political infrastructure, finally organize people and take over the Republican Party from the precinct level to the county level, to the state level as MAGA Republicans. And at the same time, and this is what's so important, public intellectuals and heroes like Brooks Rollins and the people at America First Party Institute to start a think tank, Stephen Miller at America First Law to start something legally to think through these issues. Russ Vought in that team of Mark Paoletta, Jeff Clark, all of them are with CRA. And the project that has no name, Project 2025. Right? A coordination effort. These are people who put it on the line. They would never be hired by anybody else in doing this. These were MAGA policies to make sure that in the certainty that everybody had that we're going to win, but we have to be ready this time. We have to have policies. We have 100 days. We have to understand this. We have to have teams and cadres that have worked together. Of the 3,000 or 4,000 people that we never filled those billets in the first term because we didn't have the bench. You have it now, I think Sergio told me the other day, it's 3,000 people. That's how you have Days of Thunder. I gave that PBS interview years ago. I said, if we had one or two things, that'd be flooding the zone. This is flooding the zone when you have 10. As Larry said, you read it every day. You got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 things in every different vertical. Well thought through. Tight executive orders, executive actions, presidential memorandums. This is what's driving it. It's that combination of a political apparatus that's grassroots and people are using their agency. They're getting off the sofa and say, I'm in for this. That's how Trump won. People went door to door in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, in Arizona and Georgia. Why? Because the Trump voter, those voters, a lot of low information, low propensity voters. Doesn't mean they're stupid or don't have college education. They're just not interested in politics. But they will come out if you go get them. And we won. Think about that. We won. But Larry Arnn says we're in 1860. And Larry Arnn is right. When we won on that night, you guys watching the War Room broadcast, I said, get ready. We're about to have the mother of all battles. And then the inauguration came, and all the tech bros are there, and all the crypto guys, and they're running around. They're all in tuxedos, all big party. I said, fine, party, it's great. Enjoy yourself. We have to do that. It's part of it, historically part of it. But I said then, before we get to 100 days, we're going to be in a gunfight. And I want to know who the summer soldiers and the sunshine patriots are, who's with us in 100 days. Because Trump ain't backing off. He did not risk 300 years in prison. And remember, they wanted to send him to prison to die in prison. If you don't understand that, you do not understand the man's sacrifice. They wanted to send him to prison to die in prison. And if they steal 2028, they will send Trump to prison. We're in it now. We have now the convergence because our political class and the sociopathic overlords on Wall Street and the corporatists and the oligarchs in Silicon Valley, and we haven't made these tough choices when we had chances to make them. We're in now the convergence of multiple crises that's going to lead to late in the year of 1860 and into 1861. We have the three verticals, as I talk about on the show, and I'm going to add the administrative state in a second, but the three verticals. One, we're in the kinetic part of the Third World War. We're not kind of in before, this is World War III. If you look at World War II from September 1939 in Poland to the Wehrmacht going after the Russians in June of 1941 of Operation Barbarossa, all that time, the fall of France, Dunkirk, the Battle of Britain, North Africa, throw in Finland and some other, and fall of France, a couple 100,000 people, bad. There's 1.5 million people dead or wounded in Ukraine. It looks like Dresden in 1945. Look at Gaza. We got 2 carrier battle groups off the southern tip of Saudi Arabia. You read the paper today. They're running sorties every day. We're in the kinetic part of the Third World War, and President Trump's trying to stop that war. Stop the shooting part of it at least. Figure out some rapprochement with the Russians and maybe pull them out of the Chinese Communist Party's sphere on the Eurasian landmass. The other is the deportations of 10 million illegal alien invaders that came here on Biden's watch, totally coordinated, not chaos, highly thought through. Just look at the numbers. The number in the reconciliation bill is $170 billion to recreate and rebuild what ICE needs to get them out of here. And look at the Supreme Court. Part of the converging crisis is a constitutional crisis, folks. It's going to be front and center in June or July of this year. When they step in front of, the unified executive theory, or as Mike Davis refers to it, Article 2, powers of the president, to number one, be the chief executive and make decisions about who works in the government and who doesn't and how many, and about budgets, about impounding budgets, that the appropriations bill is one thing, but he can impound because he's chief executive, so says the Constitution. Number two, he's the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. And no judge on earth can come between him as commander-in-chief and what he thinks is an action that should be taken. And the third, it's not an independent DOJ. He's the chief magistrate and the chief law enforcement officer of this government. They don't believe that. They don't believe any of it. They have 170 lawsuits right now to stop him, because to delay is to deny, and they know that. And the only thing they've got working is these radicals on the court. And right now they're going to force Boasberg and up to the Supreme Court a confrontation on a human trafficker. Understand who they're embracing. A human trafficker, because here's why. It's quite simple. They want to make it so tough to get the criminals out, so tough to get the gangs out, that you just give up on the 10 million. All 10 million illegal alien invaders must leave the country, or we don't have a republic. All of them. Remember Langford? Remember the huge debates we had over the border bill and how much they threw it in Trump's face? Trump's terrible. This bill is going to cost, hundreds of billions of dollars, take 10 years to implement. Trump secured the border in 60 days. 60 days. Everything they tell you in Washington, D.C. is a bald-faced lie. 60 days. And he hadn't even started building the wall yet, which has to be built. But then you get to the main event. This unsustainable financial model we have and business model we have, this is insanity. It's insanity. It's not going to affect future generations. It's here now. The deficit for the first 6 months is $1.3 trillion. We're going to have a $2.5 trillion deficit this year. The big, great, beautiful bill they're working on, $5 trillion debt ceiling relief. I think it's 2 years. It doesn't work. It's not going to work. And who on Capitol Hill is going to have the courage to do what needs to be done? We have to cut. No 10-year plan. I don't want a 10-year plan. This is a bankruptcy, and I deal with it like I dealt with bankruptcy at Goldman Sachs in my own firm. This is a restructuring. I care about this year, and I care about next year. And I care about cash in, and I care about cash out. I don't want to hear any happy talk on some 10 years, and you're not going to give me conservative wins and, $1.2 trillion and $3 trillion of 10 years. I don't care about year 4. I don't care about year 5. They don't exist. You know why? You pulled that scam for years and years and years. And here's where we are. I care about this year, and I care about next year. And we have to, look, I've got differences with Elon, but I fully support Doge. I want to find out and see actually where that cash saving is. We need to see that. One reason we need to see it, we can't let the political class off the hook of thinking that some fairy godmother is going to come in here and wave a magic wand. Every easy decision is a long time ago. We only have tough decisions now, and only hard and tough people can make it and stick to it. Because we're converging, these crises are converging. You're going to have to cut defense, and you're going to have to cut Medicaid, and you're going to have to cut social programs. And all these cuts are not going to be easy. But the question I have, and I spent 8 years as a naval officer, 3.5, 4 at sea, and 3.5, 4 at the Pentagon in Reagan's first years. I'm a Hawk. My daughter's a West Point grad, 101st in Iraq. So we got skin in the game. But I say this out of love and respect for the military. You can't spend $1 trillion, folks. Not going to happen. Think about this. Think of the absurdity of this. The EU says tonight as we walk in here, they're not going to decouple. These deals that Scott Bessent's putting out there that they're working on has basically a part of it that says in the trading part, because you're just going to get the architecture, you're going to get the overall framework. But in there, you're kind of with us, and we're going to work at these non-tariff barriers and the tariffs, and we're going to figure it out, but you're kind of in our camp. And you're certainly not in the CCP camp. The EU informed us tonight, well, they're not going to decouple. They're not going to allow that. I go, isn't that interesting? We have 2 carrier battle groups. That's about, 20,000 sailors, young men and women. You know what a battle group is? A carrier with a carrier wing, right? They can get over the decks, American power projection. with cruisers and destroyers and frigates. As a young man, I was on one of those destroyers in the North Arabian Sea for the Iranian hostage crisis, that fiasco. So I know what it is to steam over there. I know what those young people are going through. We have 2 guarding the Red Sea. Why? To keep the Suez Canal open, so NATO and the EU can get oil from the Straits of Hormuz and goods from China. 3% of that traffic goes through the Suez Canal as the United States. And I realize there's military activity there with the Houthis. I also am not a supporter of that. 2 carrier battle groups. The entire EU has a Royal Navy destroyer, a French frigate, and an Italian corvette. To the EU, screw you. Start picking up your own tab. We've turned our military. I go to this conference yesterday, I tell them, well, Steve, some days, Trump says stuff and the stock market goes up. I said, I don't give a damn what the stock market does every day. It's a casino. That's not investors. That's computers trading with each other. These young kids, I don't care about that. That's a casino, and a casino's mentality. And what they've turned our beloved military into is basically rent-a-cops for the casino. That must stop. President Trump's genius of the hemispheric defense from Greenland to the Panama Canal is a naval strategy to block the Russian submarines. Up in Murmansk and Archangels, they come through, we got them. And no Chinese Navy through the Panama Canal and not turning the Caribbean into a Chinese lake, right? And use the vast Pacific. The vast Pacific is our heartland for strategy. This is Mackinder for us. With the 3-island chain, where Pete Hegseth went at first. Now, I respectfully submit, we don't need $1 trillion for that. Right? It's time we stop paying for the casino. We stop paying. This casino already destroyed the heartland of this country and working class people in this country and the middle class of this country. Why do you think they love Trump? Trump is the first and only person, even Reagan, as great as he was, that they said, hey, not in the room, not in the deal. And that guy's put me in the room. He's put me at the head of the table. People who know nothing about politics, nothing about Republican orthodoxy, support Trump. That coalition's a 1932 type coalition. But we got to go through some choppy water. Larry Arnn says we're in 1860, and you know what? He's right. These crises are convergent. Think about this for a second. You got to cut the defense budget by $200 billion. Now, not in 10 years, now. You then have to Medicaid, but Medicaid, you got to be smart about it. Because there's a lot of MAGA on Medicaid. You know why? There's no good paying manufacturing jobs in this country. You can tell. Do you think MAGA, they don't want a handout? They don't want government assistance? You think those people, as proud and tough as they are, they want that? Hell no. They have to have it. 9 million of them have 2 jobs. There's what? 20% of the $1.4 trillion credit card debt is non-performing right now? What percentage of that is MAGA? What percentage of that is working class Americans that need that credit card to gap their expenses? These people are the same people that were in the 8th Air Force over Germany. The same people at Normandy, the same people at Tarawa and Peleliu, the same exact people. They've been abandoned by a political class and a commercial class that has abandoned them and abandoned their interests and put interests of other nations and other people and other countries and money and power ahead of their interest. And Trump's the first one to come and say, no, we're going to make America great again. Right? And they've responded to it. And Larry Arnn is right. And this is why I say, and he drives Morning Joe and this crowd up a tree, their heads blow up. We've had many great men and women in this country and great political leaders and people like President Reagan and others. But we've had 3 that countries don't get in a lifetime. General Washington at the birth of this nation, the birth of the republic, both on the battlefield and then as president, because of the respect he had. And people had respect for him. President Lincoln, if you studied it, kind of ran the deal as a warlord, right? One particularly, if he had to shred the Constitution on certain things, or as he and Seward would say, the inherent powers of the executive, is the way he would describe it, he would do it. Because he realized this country is being torn apart. It was going to be two countries. And they had a vision of what this country would be. So the rebirth of the nation. And Trump is here at the rejuvenation and the regeneration of that nation. And we've got one shot. One shot. And it's going to be determined very simply. Who doesn't quit? Right? They got more money and more power in the media and the universities. They got it all. They got every institution in this country. But we're finding out, number one, our institutions are pretty good, right? I went to Harvard, and I would take Hillsdale any day of the week. Because he's got the guts to tell the federal government, whether Trump, I don't want your money, I don't need your money, because with your money comes control. And that's the problem at Harvard. Hey, you can do anything you want. You can have any group of people you want, but you don't take any taxpayer money. Cut the money off. Cut it all off. And don't put all the burden on the Jewish students and the Jewish people. It's far deeper than that. They ought to purge. Number one, it ought to be 200 of these Marxists in the faculty have to go. And 200 in the administration. And I'm a big believer you go to the public Ivies, and the first two I would start with is Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Madison, Wisconsin, right? You go there and say, guess what? The $4 billion stops tomorrow, and here's a list of 200 professors and 200 administrators. When they're gone, the money starts coming back, and not a second beforehand. Cut them off. Larry Arnn brought up the law firms. What has Trump's fight shown us? These are the law firms are now, with the private equity and how they've interacted with the private equity, are the most powerful institutions because of the connective tissue that are interlocking to the capital markets and to the corporatists. And these are powerful. And they pick the most powerful, not the biggest, but Paul Weiss, the most powerful, and Karp, the most powerful, organizing all this demonic activity. He broke them in 24 hours. How'd he break them? How's he breaking Harvard? It's federal money. The whole system sucks off the federal tit. You cut off the money in the. You know why Paul Weiss surrendered? They put a line in there. No security clearances, no government contracts. Oh, by the way, any clients you have, no government work. Paul Weiss had all their buddies at other law firms getting on, like jackals, getting on their clients. And the partners came and said, surrender. Skadden Arps, the most prominent law firm in mergers and acquisitions. I mean, the white shoe of the white shoe firms, 24 hours and $100 million for the good of the order. Because that money is all spent on these radical NGOs that are suing the government all the time with top quality lawyers, no more. And you know what lesson we learned? How many partners at law firms, are those law firms that quit? Here's how many. None. They're gutless cowards. They're big talkers and big deal when they're in the shadows. You put them in the light, not one partner at any of these law firms that quit. A couple of associates that quit, and God bless you. You had your values and you stood up for them. The legal profession should be ashamed of itself. The finest law firms, this is the problem with the country. Why do you think the working class and middle class, and they got stiffed? These are the most prominent institutions in the country. And guess what? All the universities are going to crater too, including Harvard. They're addicted to that federal money. And Trump's going to break them. As these crises converge, we're going to have years. Look at the Civil War. The Civil War wasn't the 3.5 years of combat. It's much longer than that, right? It was Reconstruction and everything that happened there. These wars take a long time. These divisions in countries, they can't be negotiated out, can't be debated out. This is not a debate. This is not a debating society. This is one side's going to win and one side's going to lose. And the side that doesn't quit is going to win. Now, there are going to be days that you feel like quitting. There are going to be days that it's overcast and dark and nothing's going right. In fact, there may be years like that. But here's why I feel good. I've seen 2 of those years in 21 and 22, right? And we didn't flinch. And we had his back. And we came to victory. And now it's to execute on that victory. But the convergence of deporting 10 million illegal alien invaders and making significant cuts along with the Defense Department in social programs, how do you think that's going to play on TV? Where do you think that, yeah. Even the discussion at OMB a couple of months ago about where just the money was and putting a freeze on it, sentiment meltdown. A human trafficker and criminals sends them into meltdown. We haven't seen the hard part yet. The hard part's to come. Let me be very blunt about this. If you falter, we're not going to make it. That puts tremendous responsibility. It can't be on Trump's shoulders. It can't be on the people around Trump's shoulders. It has to be on our shoulders. We know we have working class people in the precinct strategy and other places that are prepared, if they have leadership and courage and be relentless and stick-to-itiveness and grit, they will follow. They will be there. But they need leaders. So that's why tonight, later, you ask yourself, why has divine providence that saw Trump to victory in 16, saw Trump sent to Mar-a-Lago in 20, and saw Trump come back? Divine providence, the hand of God is working here. But the hand of God works through human instrumentality. Just like Lexington and Concord. Think about if they hadn't stood up. It's the shot heard around the world for a reason. They took on the most powerful empire in the world with virtually nothing. That's you. And ask yourself, why am I here? What is my task and what is my purpose? What's my fate? What's my destiny? Why have I been given this, that I'm here supporting this great institution, knowing these people, networking, and having the interest to do it, and the focus to do it, and the love of American history. This republic is in the balance, a constitutional republic. We're either going to have it or we're going to lose it. And history is going to judge and weigh and measure us. Particularly those of a certain age, the boomers. We haven't had a great track record. We just haven't. And now is the defining moment. And I'm going to tell you, Larry Arnn and Steve Bannon and Donald Trump and many of the people in this room, we're not going to be here for the final victory because it's not coming next year or the year after or the year after that. It took this country, 50 years, 60 years longer to get into this, and people went along with it as controlled opposition, thinking you were doing the right thing, and now you understand, after the steal of 2020, of how radical and dangerous these people were and what they were prepared to do to this country and the citizens of this country. So it's your gut check. And if you will use your agency and commit it all, and I mean all, not partially all, we're going to win this. But if we falter, we're going to lose. And we're going to be judged on that in the afterlife, but We're going to be weighed and measured and judged by the history of this country. Thank you.